put yourself back in my shoes before the first child.
Yeah.
What was your biggest fear?
As an artist, how do you envision using your creativity to bond with your child?
One of the biggest mistakes I made as a husband was...
Hey, it's Adam, and you're listening to The Adam Cobb Show. Weekly content devoted to all things fitness, finding your center, and fumbling through fatherhood. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. We hope this is a space that you come to, that you can feel connected. We're better together. Please subscribe and follow all of our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. Welcome, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah. Today we have Mark Leibowitz, my boy, my brother, a world-class, award-winning photographer, director. I've sat in that seat as a recipient of your amazing skills, and more importantly to me, an amazing man who leans in, who listens, who's funny, and who's caring, who's just really there and leans in and listens. And today, it's real exciting because you reached out to me and said, hey, I have an idea and I'd love to share as a expecting dad. And here's a gift for you. This is from my boy, Brett Hobel. Hey, Brett. Shout out to Brett. And this says, Dad Strong. So I'm rocking it as well because I know you are strong and you're about to be a dad. So I just want to say congratulations to you and Dominica. And I'm very curious as to the questions that you want to ask me as a dad now of 3. And I have a few questions for you for sure. And I guess I just want to know, like right now, as I hand you this Dad Strong t-shirt, like what comes up for you?
First was, is it my size?
Yeah.
You asked me in the parking lot my shirt size, and I had a fairly tentative answer, whether it was a medium or a large. So we'll see if we got that right. But I think that that's a really good kind of segue to some of the doubts and questions of being a first-time expecting father, where I don't really know how the shirt's going to fit. And I'm unclear as to what it's going to feel like when I put it on. So I don't have the answer. There's uncertainty. There's excitement. It's a great shirt. I'm excited to try it on. Excited to be part of the club, invited in, feel honored for that. Feel like it's a really special once in a lifetime moment. That's something that Dominica, my wife, and I have been speaking about a lot, how this is such a special time, our kind of last moments alone as a couple before we welcome our first child into the world. We're not revealing the gender, as I told Adam before here, and he's been pushing me hard to get it out.
Well, because there's an opportunity. We could share this.
Yeah.
And then the naming of your child won't even be as hard because we get a bunch of different ideas from different, people that are watching and listening. And then it won't be as hard for you to make that choice.
This is precisely why my wife does not want to share the gender.
Hi, Dominica. Love you, Dominica. Okay. Do you have a process for the names? As far as the naming of your child, do you have a somewhat of a process happening?
There is a process right now. It's primarily driven by my wife. Okay. I, so far, have been responding and listening and kind of hearing some of the things that are most important to her. And we have a little bit less than 4 months left in the pregnancy and are just now really diving into the name process. And so there's some additional research and things that will be happening over the coming weeks.
Okay. When Days and I did this, we basically each brought a list of 20 names each. And then we were like, we didn't want to insult the other person if we didn't like the name. So we'd be like, well, instead of being like, no, that's terrible, we would say, well, like, oh, I think that's on my hot list, or that's on my, medium or cold or something like that. Is there any names that have been said so far that you were like, oh, I like that? Yeah?
There's been a couple of names that were on Dominica's initial list that she shared with me that I could see working very well. We have also received unsolicited names in both genders from numerous people.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of funny ones in there, but nothing that's really at the top.
Do you want to share a funny one
of our list? One that we enjoyed was Galaxy is the name.
Galaxy.
Galaxy.
Okay, that feels leaning like maybe a little bit more towards maybe a boy.
There was Andromeda.
Okay. Yeah.
Then there was actually a few names that I couldn't pronounce. A lot of these were based upon like ancient mythology, the constellations. They're all over the place.
Yeah, very good. Okay, I'm wondering, what aspects of your life do you think right now are going to change, especially as someone who spends a lot of their time, as we're both in the same men's group, MMT, shout out, woo woo, MMT guys. And as you spend a fair amount of your time traveling for work and being really in demand of your work, I'm curious, what aspects of your life do you foresee changing and sort of how to just accept that part? Yeah.
Well, if my agents are listening, then I definitely will be available for any jobs that you can book. But the honest answer is that I do hope to travel less. I plan to not travel at all for the month before the due date, and hopefully can not travel for a few months after the baby is born. But we'll see what's possible financially and what opportunities arise. But my preference would be to be home as much as possible. And part of that has been working with the people who make my work possible to find more opportunities in Los Angeles where we live, and specifically to increase marketing here and decrease it in other areas, knowing that this change was coming.
Yeah. Because I know your work, and it's amazing. And anybody that can work with you is lucky to have you and work with you, especially all those LA people.
If you need personal training, Adam doesn't really do that anymore. It's more life coaching, but sorry if I'm outdated on what he's looking for, but this right there.
Performance coaching.
Performance coaching, yes.
Okay. I'm curious just right off the bat. Do you have a question for me? Yeah? We'll fire one off. What you got?
Thinking back before Scarlett was born.
Yeah.
Which
is really hard to do because now there's 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want you to put yourself back in my shoes before the first child.
Yeah. Okay.
Deep breath, feeling the heart, feeling the gut. What was your biggest fear?
Which is so crazy because I was just about to ask you, and I thought maybe it's a little too early, but I was going to ask you, what's your biggest fear right now? Or what's a fear? And then you went ahead. I just love you, man. What was my biggest fear before Scarlett was born? I think it's easier to start with just a fear. I think what comes up for me, at first it started to be like, it started to be about me, around like, I'm not going to have any me time. Like my biggest fear was like, at first it was like, I'm not going to have any me time. What am I going to do? And then it was like, I'm in the shallow end of the pool. And now all of a sudden I'm going in the deeper end. And the deeper end of the pool was, I didn't see or experience fatherhood because my mom did both. My mom was my mom and my dad up until my stepdad came into my life at 12, 13. So for many years, like it was just me and mom. And I was afraid, and my fear was like, because I didn't experience it, how am I going to do it? I have nothing to model from. If anything, I just have like movies and certain like things like movies and shows and maybe other friends that I can talk to become sort of that mentor or that model. But I didn't have that. So it was almost like some doubt of like, do I have that missing DNA chip because I didn't experience it? Yeah, that would be my response.
Thank you.
Whoa.
I don't think you're missing that chip, obviously.
No, I'm not.
You are tremendous at it.
I'm not. If anything, it may be, thank you. If not, sometimes life, at least my life, unfolded the way it did so that I wanted to be like the best dad and the most present dad. And I knew I wanted to be the most present dad. And I did multiple things to do that. And it wasn't always the best in the beginning because there was a lack of what I knew to be freedom. So there was a big lack of Adam time. And I had a really hard time in the beginning dealing with that, from frustration to anger to like feeling just really overwhelmed. And Daisy had a better time with it. She just embraced it, flowed with it. I'm a mom, hear me roar. I was like, I'm my dad, and I need to go for my run. I need to be able to journal and meditate, but I can't. What's your biggest fear right now?
Thinking back to a couple months ago, the first fear that really hit me was not being there to help raise the child. Like something happening to me, be it death or something else. And I had a shoot where we were heading up to the mountains and we were going to be horseback riding into the mountains. And I kept having this like recurring intuition or fear that, I could get thrown from this horse and just die. And funny enough, I did get thrown from a horse on that shoot.
Did you?
Yeah. Ended up on the ground. People said it was an incredibly graceful bucking off of the horse. Just hurt the wrist a little bit, but otherwise was totally fine.
Was anybody filming you on the horse?
No, but there was a camera there, and I actually asked him why I didn't film, and he said he didn't want to film me breaking my neck, and I said, but I didn't break my neck, and this was a missed opportunity.
It was a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Which we would be playing on the podcast, but he didn't film it.
Oh, that would have been perfect. Gene would have wove
just
that in.
A little B-roll.
Beautifully.
We're going to AI that for you guys. Yeah.
Oh.
Man and buzz cut falls from horse. Just type it in.
And before this dad on the horizon opportunity for you, you hadn't had thoughts like that much, right? Yeah.
Yeah, never had those thoughts. No concern.
Never. Yeah.
So thinking about as you're bringing that up, I think that there's this really powerful like externalization of purpose that I'm, instead of just living for myself and being focused, as you were like mentioning on the need to go for a run, the need to journal, the need to do all these things, then it became the need to be there to help support this child. And my wife is incredibly self-sufficient at all things. And so I never really felt like any concern about like not being there to support her, because I know that she would handle everything with flying colors. But the idea of not being there for a child somehow struck a different chord with me.
Yeah. That is interesting. I hadn't thought of that before, but I've traveled like you. I've traveled so much, and a lot of it was just for fun or for some work. And I remember at times being on the plane and maybe messaging my mom and being like, "Hey, I love you. You've done such a great job, and like I'm so happy in my life." Because there were moments where I don't know. I just had this like feeling like I was always doing crazy things. Like jumping off being in New Zealand and like going over a New Zealand bridge in like glacier water and going, I'm going to jump off this bridge right now. And like jumping off the bridge in the glacier water, right? And just like, yeah, I'm fully alive. And I remember thinking like, I can't imagine like making it to 50 just because I'm so wild and I love my life and I do these crazy things. And over the last few years, when I've gotten on a plane, and it's been much less, when I've gotten on a plane, I've been like, God, I got a lot more like, I have a lot more to give, I got a lot more to give. Maybe not this time. Okay. I remember being a little more sensitive to that and thinking about it differently in that way. Yeah. Similar to that, I mentioned Adam time, like for you, like how do you, and have you thought of this, like how you plan on sort of like incorporating that like Mark time? Because I know for you, you're really in tune with like your thoughts and you like your quiet time. So I'm curious if you've thought about that at all, as this will be different. And we're both older dads in that case. In this case, we're older dads, which there's pros and cons. But like what I have found so far is like I've had all this time to create my own practices, my own sacred practices. Right? A lot of friends had kids at 25. Well, they didn't have any practices to even be like, what am I missing? So I had these practices and I knew what I was missing. And I was like, but I also have those practices built and I can restart them, and I could restart them a little differently. But I'm curious for you. Yeah, have you given that much thought?
I have given a little thought, and the way you phrased that question actually brought me back to a yoga class I was in with a gentleman by the name of John Friend, who had founded the school of yoga called Anusara Yoga. And he had probably 300 people in a massive auditorium where he was teaching the class, and he was moving us through this extremely difficult sequence. And then he put us into, like, I don't know if it was downward dog or child's pose, but some more restful pose. And he said, what if you only had 10 seconds to recover? How would you think differently right now? Mm. And it had me realize that as I move into this fatherhood phase of life, that I will actually need to really condense a lot of the practices I had into much shorter periods of time, where I might just get the equivalent of 10 seconds to recover and to regroup before I have to dive back in. And whether it's transitioning from work to supporting Dominica to supporting the baby, whatever it is, I think that just recognizing that those time periods will be shorter or less frequent, and I will have to accept them for what they are.
Yeah, that's really good. Whether it's supporting Dominica, or supporting the baby, supporting her or him, or
they.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's such a focus on gender, I've noticed over here.
Brother, I'm curious for you, because you're a curious guy, and we've asked great questions to each other, whether it's through men's group or, before, after we go for our walk and talk. But what type of curiosities have come up for you around this new part that you're going to get to discover, which is this dad part of you? You don't know that part yet. And you know yourself pretty well, more than most men that I know. What curiosities are coming up around this new part?
I think the first thing that kind of hits me is, will I be willing to bring all the play and the fun that I love in life, that kind of mischievousness that is such a part of my personality? My friends will say sometimes Mark gets a glint in his eye, and then you know that there's some kind of trouble that's going to be coming, because the little, on a good day, 12-year-old, and other days, the 6-year-old, or the 4-year-old, or the 2-year-old Mark will come out to play. And so it's, how will I bring that out? And
yes.
Somebody was talking about it this last weekend, and they were like, my gosh, your poor wife is going to be raising 2 children.
and that's just an easy segue. I mean, we had this, Man Morning Thursday group, men's group, where we're however many months ago now, but we're walking and talking, and we're talking about some real serious stuff. I'm talking about my mom and her visiting, and it was actually quite an emotional story. And I had my water bottle like this, if the camera can catch this. Gene, the camera has this, you think? Right here? Cool. So I had my water bottle kind of like here, I was holding it, and then I did something like this, and I saw that little twinkle in Mark's eye, and I was like, I wonder what he's like thinking over there. And then
go ahead, stand
Mark
Adam's
said,
camera out and bring that back.
He's like, I always want this opportunity. And do you remember what you said to me?
I said, all I could think about the entire time you were telling this incredibly serious story about your mother was basically running over to you and knocking the water bottle out of your hand, and or picking you and the water bottle up and tossing you over this like cable fence into the marina.
And I was like, what? That's what I noticed in your face. And the other guys were like, huh? But that is that part of you that I would like to also, acknowledge, which is a huge part of your personality, and that playfulness. And I know a lot of dads, especially early on, they get really protective, right? And also really serious, because all of a sudden there's less sleep, there's tension, there's this, I have to protect you. And it's hard to be playful, and yet you have to be playful. That's a really cool distinction that you're thinking about ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that I've always loved kids. I've always loved playing with kids. And there's been times where I've been at your place and have got to play with Scarlett. And I think that for me, the connection comes through the play and the fun. And not that there isn't a time for serious conversation and learning and schoolwork and all those things. But I think that initially it's going to be more the fun and the story times and the peekaboo and the goofy faces and the other ways to connect.
Yeah, I remember Daisy and I being really blown away with the way that you and Scarlett interacted and played and the way that she responded to you. Because at least what we've found so far are the friends that come over that are parents, have a reasonable, easy way to connect. But the friends that do not have kids, or even the friends that are single, like almost no chance. And you really broke that mold. So I think that you sort of already kind of get it, and it's going to be really fun for me. I can't wait to see you interact, with your kid and your baby. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I feel like the play might be a strength, and perhaps the discipline or the boundaries and rules might be somewhere that I need to work on improving.
We'll see.
We'll see. To be determined in the upcoming podcast near you.
Oh, man. Okay. What you got? Fire away. I know you came with some questions too. So, yeah.
I guess the first question I have, and I don't know if you've talked about this somewhere else, but like you mentioned actually earlier in this podcast, is you spent many years of your life without your dad.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear first what that was like for you, and then second, like what are the lessons that you've learned about the importance of fatherhood from that?
Yeah. I would say, what was it like for me? I think I just remember, I was, so young. It's like, what do we remember at that age? I remember giving mom like Mother's Day cards and Father's Day cards. I remember that. I remember on Father's Day, kids making cards for their dads, and I made one for my mom. And I remember sometimes dads being there in the school, and mom was at work. And I remember me not having a dad like that and feeling sort of like, I don't think I've actually thought about this. This is a very cool question, Mark. Thank you. I remember sort of pretending like I was busy, off kind of on my desk when the other kids had dads around for Father's Day, and in the beginning of maybe drop off or whatever, something like that. That's sort of some of the things I remember. I remember going over my my best friend's house, Jeff Martin, shout out Jeff Martin, and his dad was a Yankees fan, a Giants fan, and very early on, I didn't have, mom was always working and loving me, but always working, and mom wasn't too big into sports. So I gravitated to my best friend's dad. And I think at a young age and throughout probably my life, and I have an amazing stepdad, Pops. And I think growing up without a dad, I think I talked to somebody recently about this who also grew up majority with his mom, said that throughout your life, you start to just look for father figures, and you sort of just, and they kind of also look for you. And there's this sort of pull in that way. Yeah. Yeah. And there was a second part to that. I forget what it was.
Let me ask a follow-up to the first part.
Yeah.
Because I heard a lot of description of what happened, but what did it feel like?
Man, it's hard to remember because it was so long ago, I would imagine, I can only imagine. I imagine it would feel lonely, but I don't remember that feeling because it was so young. Yeah. Oh, let me add something there. So my mom and my father, biological father, he basically was born. We moved from Massachusetts to Florida. I haven't really talked about this much, as far as publicly. Moved to Florida. We were down there, my mom, me, my father, and then my mom and I left when I was, I think, around 3. But, and I don't remember when I was 1 and 2, but I do remember holding Scarlett. And I remember holding her and thinking, man, the connection, the feeling, and oh my God, what I would do to protect you. And I remember thinking, I wonder if my father ever like held me. Was he always just busy, like out working, and he didn't really connect with me, and that's why he didn't make a more of an effort to be in my life, you know, as a teenager, as an adult. And then I went over to my grandmother's house, my father's mom, and after she passed away, she left me a photo book. And as I flipped through this photo book, there are multiple pictures of my father, me at 2 years old, and my father holding me and not even looking at the camera, but looking at me. And the camera was taking a picture, and I was looking at the camera as a 2-year-old, but my father was looking at me and just like a big smile. And that definitely brought me to tears. That was a really like, whew, because I was curious of that. And I was asking that question out loud, like in my journal and to God. And then all of a sudden I saw this photo book, and it really got me. Yeah. Yeah. And I think since then it's made me want to, again, just be like, how present can I be with Scarlett? And Scarlett's really fun right now because she's 3. And even this morning we went to like see the sunrise, and like first thing, she got up super early. And you'll find this, that's like the kids wake up super early. I wanted at least another hour, like from 5 to 6:30. I was like, some Adam time. She woke up and I was like, all right, let's go for a walk. and went to go. And we just did, and I did what I would normally do, did it different, and it was beautiful. And we fed some doggies on the strand at Hermosa Beach, and we saw the sunrise, and we laughed, and it was beautiful. So, yeah, similar to my childhood. I have a question for you around your childhood. I was curious, like, what about your own childhood that when you think back, would you like to replicate moving forward with now your family? And then similar question around your childhood, is there anything you'd like to avoid?
Great question. I think things I'd like to replicate, we had a bunch of cousins close, and we would have Friday night Shabbat dinners every week with the whole family. And that was a really incredible experience. So those regular family dinners are definitely something I like to replicate, which is not something that we currently do in our relationship with just the two of us. We often have dinner together, but it doesn't have the same intentionality behind it. So I think bringing some kind of consistent, intentional, like meal-based gathering for the family is one thing that I want to add in. One thing that we have not figured out is exactly how we're going to work through religion, because I was raised Jewish and Dominica was raised in, I forget exactly which denomination, but in the church. So that is something that we have not figured out what we're going to do. And I think we'll probably get the name discussion done first and then move on to that one. So that's like a big uncertainty. And I definitely had, I would say, a somewhat religious upbringing, which I, looking back on, really enjoyed. And actually was just this past weekend thinking back to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bat mitzvah, and that kind of initiation into adulthood. And that if we don't choose to do that, what other kind of initiation into adulthood would we do for our child as like a kind of important like transition for them? So that was something that I was thinking about that I would like to do, just not sure in what form. And in terms of things not to do, I think that I'd like to find time off of work with more consistency that I have. I think that my father had a full-time job. He owned his own business, had a bunch of employees. And I remember him not being available during the day because he was providing for the household. And Dominic and I split those responsibilities differently than my parents did. Obviously, it's a very different time now. And so I'd like to find a way to be more present and have kind of more dad daytime and some of that like playtime, as opposed to being away at work all day and then available in the evenings or available in the mornings. I always feel like my dad was extremely attentive during those times, but that's something I like to do a little bit differently. And I think that having the freelance creative job that I do actually allows for that to happen. And that's something I'm excited about. And I actually really am looking forward to the times where Dominica books a big job and I get to stay at home for a few days alone with the kid.
Dad daytime, I wrote down. It reminds me of Barack Obama interviewed Bruce Springsteen, and it was an excellent little podcast they did. I think it's 6 episodes. And Bruce Springsteen was talking about, because he was an artist and on the road a lot, and he would be up all night working, and therefore he would get up really late, and he would, see his kid in the kind of like it would be like more like evening hours around there, because he was more of a night owl. So he would be with his child around the evening. And his wife said, Bruce, like, I get it. I mean, your career and what you do for a living as an artist. And his wife said, I just sometimes feel disappointed. I feel sad because you don't get to be there for our kid's best time. And the best time for our kid is like in the morning and like early-ish, morning, afternoon. But in the evening, like most kids, they start getting a little bit tired and whiny and things like that. So I think you're really onto something, thinking about that, like those mornings and the daytimes. And that's cool that you're looking forward to the time where you get to stay home and step into that.
Yeah, I have no doubt that I will be taking the morning shift. I am very much of a morning person. Today I was up a little bit after 4 a.m. and out of bed and ready to go. And so I know that for at least the early years, whenever I'm home, the morning shift will be 100%.
And there's a little joke. There's a little joke in that, right? I remember Dominica saying to me about, what does she call it? It's like Mark, like 5 a.m. time or morning.
Like morning Mark.
Morning Mark. Yeah.
These are not her exact words, but the advice I would give is be very cautious around morning Mark, because he has a lot of energy and it is more than most people want at that hour.
Yeah, I remember her going, you can take morning Mark anytime, Adam. And we were at like the dinner in Venice, and I remember saying that and I was like, okay. And then around that time, because it was funny, we started FaceTiming each other a little bit right around that time, because we're both morning people. So we were like, hey, brother, how you doing? I'm doing really good. How are you? But, honestly, that is a part of fatherhood, to be honest. Like, that's a big part of fatherhood. It's okay, right now in this moment, I have a lot of energy. Where do I bring this right now? Because sometimes I've just like brought it to Daisy, and Daisy's like, I'm caring for 2 twins and I'm up all night and not right now. And I'm like, and then I get frustrated, because I got a great story to share. And I'm like, who do I bring it to? So that's actually a really cool thing to think of. Like for you, it's like, okay, like who are the 1 or 2, 3 people where you're going to bring that to? Do you have those people? You can always bring it to me, number one, but anybody else?
I do. And for those of you, we're recording this podcast at 4:30 a.m. because Daisy kicked Adam out of the house.
You do have those people already set? Are they on standby?
I don't have those people already set, but living on the West Coast, I actually often will use my friends on the East Coast or in Texas for those really early morning phone calls. But I've actually found that there are mornings where I'm up at 4 a.m. and it is still too early to call my East Coast friends.
Oh, man.
So luckily I have a couple of friends over in Europe who can tag in for when I really need it.
That's good.
But
I call
actually,
my London friends. That's great.
I have learned that is a great time to channel that energy inward, be quiet, and to not necessarily put it upon other people, and to just use it internally.
Same here. I wrote down this question. I wanted to make sure I asked this. As an artist, and I would say like full-blown creative, I've seen you and you're just absolute. Once you tap in, you go. Like, how do you envision using your creativity to bond with your child as they enter into the world?
Anything goes are the first words that came to my mind. I think that whatever it is that child wants to do will be something that I will be willing to at least once try. So like, for example, if we're like, hey, let's go on a fishing trip, and they decide that they just want to like stack rocks or paint rocks or do nothing that has to do with fishing, just allowing that, like, their creative journey to kind of guide me for a little bit. Obviously, I recognize that I will be the adult and will have responsibility, but I think that there is beauty in the uncertainty of where the creative process I know has taken me through my life, and that letting the kid have some of their own creativity come through. And Dominica is also an incredible artist. So I think that there will be a really good blend of both of the different ways that we approach art, because we do approach it differently. Mine is a much more kind of like logical approach. And actually, I won't speak to where hers comes from, but hers is this like explosive power, whereas mine is a bit more methodical. And it'll be interesting to see in which ways our child kind of learns from us and teaches us different ways to go.
I mean, your child's already coming in with this absolute unfair, advantage. Like, oh, sorry, like I already have the creative gene. It's all flowing through me.
Unless they want to be a stockbroker, in which case,
maybe creative stockbroker. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Shout out to my stockbroker friends. I'm gonna be calling you.
How would you like help from your village now, and or in those early days, which typically are like the first 3 months? How do you want to sort of receive that?
Thank you for asking that. I have a list of 223 things that
got my pen ready, man. Let's go.
Yeah, no, we actually were speaking about this today. And what are we going to do for meals during that first time? I know that our group of friends set up a meal train for you, and there was some contributions that happened for that. Actually, don't know if I ever contributed. Sorry if I owe somebody a Venmo. I'll take care of it after the.
Well, actually, you know what? River Church set up the meal train, and shout out to Taylor, Pastor Taylor from River Church, and they were so generous. They're just dropping food off on the front porch, and these are some of the people I didn't know, like a full home cooked meal with a card that Daisy and me and Scarlett and the boys in it, and I was blown away. And sometimes we would get emotional because it felt like we were in like 1940s or 50s where they were making a home cooked meal, and they didn't want to even say hi because it was like, nope, you have a lot going on. We're just showing up and we're out. And then yes, some of the MMT guys also sent food or like a food basket or things like that. And to be honest, it actually felt really hard for me to receive, because what we needed was like, we didn't want to think about meals because all like the cooking and cleaning we didn't have time for, and transportation. So we actually had a few friends that would jump in and drive Daisy back and forth from the hospital because she couldn't drive at the time, and our boys were in the NICU, and so it got tricky. But anyway, that's part of it. But I wanted to add that in. Yeah, I mean, all the guys were amazing.
We actually discussed our list of friends, of which the MMT guys were a part of it, who we could or would call on for when we needed certain things. And we started to develop that list. And we also talked about some of the kind of different care options that we have, from a post-birth doula to our mothers to, other friends who could be available for jumping in and supporting. Because we obviously don't know exactly when the birth will happen. We don't know how the birth will go. We don't know how Dominica will be feeling and exactly what support will be needed. So for us, it was more this idea of just trying to figure out who the people we want to turn to are. And then from there, we could figure out what the asks were in real time. And I do feel incredibly fortunate to have, such a great group of friends who I know would just drop everything to support us as needed.
Do you have a night nurse? Are you gonna go that route?
We are not going to go a night nurse route. It's something we talked about, and we decided that we really wanted to just have just us in the house for as much time as possible.
Yeah.
I think that one kid is different than having 3 in the house. I don't know if you guys had a night nurse. I know a lot of our friends have, but I don't know, maybe
I'm going to add something in this moment.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe a couple of weeks in, we'll be regretting that or wanting to change that decision, but
how
we'll
about
see.
5 days in, you're going to be calling me about this. I had shout out to D. Lee. D. Lee, I love you. D. Lee hit me up, good friend of mine, and he said that if I had, I had like $2,000 to my name, would I spend it on the night nurse or would I eat? He goes, I would go a couple weeks without eating so I could have that night nurse, because the sleep that night nurse can provide and the care, because as a dad, you just don't know what to do. And the support that they're able to give the mom, from everything from like latching and just being able to ease the sort of anxiety and like the I'm not doing good enough, that kind of stuff. The night nurse is just so needed, and want to honor the space that you want to create for as long as you can. And Daisy and I very much felt like we were in that same camp, that we didn't want even family members in the early days. We just wanted it to be us, similar to like, this isn't about you guys, it's about us. But the night nurse we needed. So we actually had a great night nurse for Scarlett, and she was so great. We ended up using her again for the boys, and we did like 12 weeks basically. Yeah. And I highly recommend it.
So we're going to start without it, and we will see in the follow-up episode, which is going to be done with me laying on the floor back here in the corner on a pillow. And Adam's going to read some notes that I like scrawled out saying, sorry, Adam, catching up on sleep. Didn't hire the night nurse.
Oh, and Gene, play that clip. This whole episode is about a night nurse. And we'll have her on. Hey, I wrote down a few things that I'm curious if there's anything. So we're in the month right now of November, and you have 1, 2, 3, about 3, because towards the end of February is the due date, and like February is sort of like all hands on deck moment. So that month doesn't even really count because you can't really do a bunch of things. But November, December, January, in these 3 months, what's sort of in your mind like, hey, I want to do, or I want us to do? Like, have you thought of anything like that? Yeah. And what are those things?
We're going to do a California local baby moon.
Oh, cool.
Is one thing we're going to do. We're going to spend a lot of time nesting in the house. Yeah. We love our house. That's a whole separate podcast. You've been a part of that journey.
I love your house
from me not enjoying the house as it needed work to really falling in love with the house and through the process and the neighborhood. And so just spending time there and enjoying our time alone in that space. I think that one of our big priorities that we've shared is just getting this time alone together. We actually have been together for 14 years roughly and married for about 6. And we are, I think, feeling closer and more connected than at any point, or almost any point we have in that entire time we've been together. And it's just a really wonderful feeling, and we're enjoying each other and communicating well. And so I think just kind of sitting in that space together is something that we're just trying to do as much as possible. That is the primary thing that we're doing. And then obviously like preparing a lot of the basic stuff for the baby. And I would also say, like, separately from that, just trying to kind of front load work as much as possible so that I can take more time off. I think Dominica will need to take some time off for sure, but I'd like to be hopefully in a position to, say no to work for a month or two, just to be home.
Yeah, that's great. Similar to being in home, which is great. I wrote down a couple tips before the baby arrives. There's this question I get often from new dads. So I was like, I'm just going to fire off a couple. Number 1, definitely have the baby moon. You're already planning on doing that. Check. I have like
Tell us about your baby moon, Adam. No,
yeah, it was amazing. Santa Barbara. It's actually, it was incredible. It was incredible. I look forward to hearing about yours. But going out to dinner, especially like in that arts district, some of those beautiful Michelin, restaurants you have, go now, because, when the baby's born, like you don't want to bring a crying baby to like a really nice restaurant in the evening. You start bringing babies to like brunches, maybe things like that. So that's something that Daisy and I joke about, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to go out to dinner tonight? And we're like, joking because it's like 3 kids, no chance right now. And so one, it's like, even though I know you want to nest, it's also like, you're going to be nesting big time, for the next year. It's like a lot of home time, which is really special. So one was like, go out to dinner.
This is why I wanted to come on the show, everybody. I knew I'd get a few gems. Keep going, Adam.
Yeah, I got you, boo. I have finished any unread books because I remember Daisy's sister, Lily, who has 3 kids, and she came to visit and just to sort of like help us out, but without her kids. And one of the things I remember her laying on the spare bed, like on her belly, reading a book. And I was like, oh, you look so peaceful. And she was like, oh, I haven't done this in 5 years. And she's a big reader. So it was a funny moment. And so I say any unread books, that's a must. Yeah. Do you have any unread books? Any books you wanted to read? Because that sort of a quiet time, that's not necessarily going to happen here.
I have a bunch of books that are in process. A lot of separate project that we've talked about before, and I filmed you before, where we're doing practices for men. So I have a lot of books I've been reading for research on that, and those would be good to buckle down and finish as you're saying this.
Yeah, definitely. And then I have set up the me time, like set up a me time routine now and start to live into it now as if baby's already here. And before Sterling and Lionel arrived, I started, rather than going down to the Strand and doing a 10,000 step walk, I started just like going right down to the beach, putting my toes in the water and walking right back. And I didn't care how many steps. And I was like, what does that feel like? I know what my long walk and how much it fills me up. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So similar to what you started the show with, which was having those routines really short. But yeah, like having some sort of me time routine and starting to live into it now. So yeah, what would like 1 or 2 things be that you think now that would be really essential when the baby's here to still do and make sure you incorporate in your day?
It's interesting you bring this up because this is something that we briefly spoke about before, which is how having Dominica pregnant is actually already changed a lot of the workout and the gym routine. And it used to be that I would head downtown to Soho Warehouse and get to the gym and get to work out for an hour, and all in, that's maybe an hour 45 kind of round trip. Whereas today we went and we had an appointment with the doctor, and then came home and I did a 20-minute kettlebell workout and then had to shower and get ready for this. So I think that moving it to the home workouts is something that's going to be there. I am not planning to install a dojo, but for those of you who are interested, you should check out Adam's dojo.
Got you.
Yeah. And maybe there does need to be a dojo installed. But I think that is one specific routine where really determining a set of home workouts. There's a great thing that this guy taught me called AC Daily 8.
Come on.
Yeah. So I did a session with Adam separately, and one of the things that he did was put together these lists of kind of 8 specific exercises that were tailored to me based upon my interests. And after the first session, I came back and I said, I don't like 6 of these. And we redid them.
I redid them on the spot.
Yeah. And we redid them. And it actually turned into something that I really, really have used with regularity.
Yeah.
And I mean, it must have been at least a year plus, maybe more ago that we did that. And I'll use them for warm-ups at the gym. They're incredible in a hotel room. You know, it takes about 10 minutes to get through the daily 8, and you can just knock through 2 of them and do that. And so I think that having something like that, which is this like really simple go-to routine where you know it like the back of your hand, that is one thing. That is a gift that you gave me quite a while ago that will still be relevant, I am sure.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. The daily 8, right? Gina and I talked about actually filming something, movement based in the dojo to be able to provide the audience here. That's going to be fun, huh, Gene? That'll be fun. Yeah. I look forward to doing that. I'm so pumped that you've kept that. You've been so diligent with daily 8, and even like sharing that when our men's group does some sort of challenge or something, and you mention it and you're like, I wonder if anybody else knows what I'm talking about. But it's like cool that we know, right? Yeah. And to keep in mind, because I shared this, remember, on Drew's podcast when we were on there together around the day dates, because Daisy and I, fell in love around, like, one of the things how we fell in love was around movement, around our love for movement. And after Scarlett, it was challenging in the beginning to find each other again in a intimate, in that partnering way. It was like all about the baby. And I remember saying, like, the baby's going to be in our world. We're not going to be in her world. And it was like, what? Like, I was so wrong. But what we did was we started doing day dates. So rather than just that nighttime dinner, it was get a babysitter in, watch Scarlett for 4 hours on a Saturday or Sunday at 10 a.m. And then we went to go do yoga together. And I remember that moment where we were like sweating together, kind of giving each other little knuckles or a high five, passing each other our waters. And it was sexy. And it was like, oh, hey, and like, hey, let's go grab some brunch together. And we did that. So just keep in mind like what that design will be, and usually like within those 3 to 6 months as the baby's born, which now is forever into the future now. Oh, one more thing. And then I put capture, and I'm sure you're already going to do this, but capture a final like before photo, especially as a master as you are behind that camera, because I think it's a beautiful marker, right, for this like transitional time that will never be the same again.
Of us together.
Of
her.
Just like of you. Yeah, of like you and Dominica, and just like this, a beautiful shot of you guys before all of a sudden now the pictures will be always you three. So just in these final days of these final months of just you two, to be able to capture some of that. I'm sure you're already doing that, right?
No.
Right? Something. Well, I brought that up specifically for you because I know somebody that does what you do all the time. Typically, like the mailman doesn't want to go for a walk on his day off, right? Like
cobbler's son has no shoes.
Exactly.
The photographer doesn't have a lot of couple photos. We have many iPhone photos, but we don't actually have
to have a proper to get a proper final shot as a marker of that transition. I thought that'd be really cool. But that's it for now. That's all I really have. And we, on this show, we like to use the words like fumbling through fatherhood. And I'm just curious as to what that sort of brings up for you. This even the word like fumbling through fatherhood. What does that mean to you?
2 things. First, gonna just find a moment where you're not paying attention, sneak up behind you and just pop that water bottle out and the obvious fumble.
That's right.
And the other thing is I think I don't know where I heard it, but there was, and I feel like it could have been like Esther Perel or someone like that was talking about this idea of how important it is for a child to see the father making mistakes, to see the father not like changing a diaper as well, or not feeding with the bottle as well, or any of the different things that maybe the dad doesn't intuitively do on the same level as the mother. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that is a brilliant invitation to fumble through fatherhood, because there actually is a great benefit in knowing that everything doesn't have to be perfect, and that it's often the imperfections that make us the most human. And I know that like from my work, a lot of times it's when things aren't going well, when we're capturing a more like difficult situation, that it's actually the most emotional, powerful moment of whatever it is we're filming, that everything does not need to be perfect, because the perfect moments rarely exist, but the fumbles, the mistakes, the difficult times, those are actually the deep moments that really kind of connect us to our own humanity. And
that's so good, brother. Al couldn't be here today, but I did chat with him, and he gave a tip or a question or something to you. So I'm going to read that to you here. Al said, if kind of tips before a baby arrives, and, Al has 3 kids, a 4th on the way. So this guy, he's in it, right? He said, like, what are the expectations? He said, I think he said, I love to share a Mark that, like, one of those things before the baby comes is chatting with your partner around, hey, what are the expectations right here? And, like, what's required? And then he went on to say, start a dialogue now, what you think being parents will be like. And I really like that. And he said, what are the non-negotiables around what does mom need? What does dad need? And what does mom want? And what does dad want? And what if we could talk about it now and actually say, you know what? This is going to be really hard, and talk about, like, how hard it will be, and actually talk about how sometimes it's going to feel like chaos. And sometimes you can, like, just be frustrated, and actually talk about that now, and not just like, woohoo, it's so exciting. Talk about it now. And then when it comes up, it just won't sting as much. And I thought that was really sound advice. Yeah. Does that bring up anything for you?
yeah, it brings up this incredible thing that Dominic and I learned from Allison Armstrong, which is the question, if I could have it all my way. And it's a phrase that we often use with each other, which is like, if I could have it all my way, we would do this, or I would do this. And then the other person can either agree with it or say, well, if I could have it all my way, I would do this. And then from there, you have a starting point for a conversation. And that's something that for the past couple of years that we've used. And it sounds like a similar kind of framework, but what I'm hearing from Al there is, don't forget to do that now for many of the questions that will be coming up as a new parent. And start those discussions now, because there might be a little bit more fatigue and a little bit less patience available for those discussions when you have a newborn in the house. And so thank you, Al, for that advice.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Yeah. And one of the things I know about you is how dedicated you are to being an incredible partner, and whether it's listening to even podcasts and looking for just like new perspectives on like a tension point. And then you so beautifully share that, and it makes me better as a partner. And I try to do the same. You lead like that. And then it makes us, whether it's in the group or me, feel more comfortable and go, yeah, kind of me too. Or here's a way. I so appreciate that. And I was just curious, as you're thinking, similar to Al's question, I was curious as to ways in which you're starting to think about that, and how you can sort of, love on your partner, knowing that there will be fatigue and tiredness, but you're always been so dedicated and really have inspired me to step back and go, okay, what else could I do today or this week for days? So I'm wondering if anything has come up, in this. Yeah. What's come up for you around that?
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes I made as a husband was not recognizing how Dominica was changing. And I felt myself going through all of these changes, but I was so focused on kind of my own process and my own life that I was failing to see all the ways that she was changing, many of which were in alignment with things that I was feeling, and some that weren't. But I think that being able to pause, take her in, tell her what I'm seeing, and then hear from her what she is actually feeling, what her experience is, and then leaving space to like learn from that, and then actually accepting that and not trying to force it to be something that it's not, or like force her back into the mold from this other time, but to just say like, okay, I hear what you're saying and I believe that it's true. That's one thing that I actually remember her saying to me was, what if everything I'm saying was true? And it was such a brilliant statement because I was like, oh yeah, everything you're saying probably is true for you in the moment you're saying it. And I should take it as such and give it that like gravitas, that value. And if I can do that and then be seeing you for the experience you're currently having, as opposed to what I might have in my mind about who you were, 8 years ago when we were on the beach in Ibiza, and not this moment where you're home nursing the baby, that it's probably a different reality. And if I can see that, that is going to be a big win for both of us.
That's really good. As we close here, it makes me think about some of the conversations we've had, and you and Dominica are just such a testament to like doing deep work. Like you guys do not lean away from, you lean into doing real deep work. And I think this child that's coming is a product of that. This product, it could be deep, could be the name, deep. I'm just saying, but it's like this child is the product of deep work that you guys have done. And I'm curious, is there any like one thing that you have, because you could offer right now in this moment for that man or just couple in general that, they're going through some work, and you, 14 years, you said? 14 years married, not a lot of people.
6 years married, 14 years together.
14 years together. Come on. Right. And now having a child because you've gone through and you've done that deep work and lived your lives. I'm curious if you want to share any sort of wisdom here around that deep work. I know you've had like a couple things specifically you shared with me that I was like, oh, that's a brilliant mindset moment, or, oh, that's a beautiful exercise, or mindset shift. Anything comes up for you that you want to share?
I think that one thing I saw myself doing with great frequency was trying to defend my position. And as soon as I learned that I don't need to defend my position, that I can actually just say, thank you for telling me that. I see why you're saying that. I love that you're telling me that. Thank you for holding up a mirror to me and giving me this opportunity to grow, as opposed to saying like, how dare you question me for this thing that I totally messed up over here? Like whatever it is, that as soon as I could receive that and not be defensive with it, that was one of the massive shifts in our relationship. And I realized that so often I was looking at myself as the victim and like, well, that's not my fault that I did that. Like, she did that to me. But as soon as I said, no, this is my responsibility. I'm responsible for the things that are happening to me, the choices that I'm making. And if I do or don't do something, and then she points it back out to me, that is totally fair game. And I need to listen to that, internalize it, and respond with love and not defensiveness. And that is much easier said than done in the moment. But I'd say that is one of the big things that, on my side of the street has helped kind of move our relationship forward.
Man, so good, brother. Any last questions for me here? Or we're just going to close up here?
When will the first play date be? And
ooh, yeah. Oh, goodness. Wow. So the boys will be the 12 weeks now. So, right, we're talking like 6 months, 7 months old or something like that. There'll probably be one. Your little one will probably be 4 months, and we'll just like, probably rock it around then. Yeah.
Maybe we let the ladies go out for 2 hours and enjoy the beach, and then we can see how we hold down the fort.
Okay, we said it here. Yeah. All right, I'm down.
Yeah.
It would just be wild.
This will be a great example of watching two fathers fumbling
through
fatherhood.
Gene, could you film that evening?
7 minutes later, the phone rings. You need us to come home already? What'd you do?
Where are you guys? Hey, I want to say, one, you make me better. You make me laugh. I love you. And your soon-to-be child is so lucky. Daisy and I have shared this, knowing that you were going to be on the show today. We were like, that child's so lucky. Like the way that your accountability, even sharing these like growth moments in your relationship, the way you just like accept the moment, the way you take accountability, your character's so high, your integrity is so high. Yeah, I just love you so much. And this child is going to get this like present, playful, creative, strong, and loving dad. Daily 8. And I just want to say thank you, man. I'm grateful that you guys chose to have a child, and I can't wait to see the dad that you are going to get to know. I think that's one of the coolest things. I said to Daisy over and over again, thank you. I don't know if I would have been pushed for like having kids when we did. I wasn't going to push for kids when we did. And I said to Daisy so many times, thank you. I would have never known this person, this new title that I get to hold. That might be my best title, that is dad. And I can't wait to have you back on the show when you will be an official dad, rocking that shirt strong. And we get to talk about what it's like in these early days of you being a dad. So thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing. I love you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for so many reasons. And one final story, if we have a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
We can do, if you have to roll the after the credits music.
Roll credits.
Adam and I, we were going for a walk. It was just us. We had met an hour early before morning. And I don't remember the exact.
We got our morning energy out.
Yeah, get our morning energy out. And I don't remember the exact order of events here, but basically you had been aware of Dominic and I talking about whether or not we wanted to have a kid, me having some uncertainty around it. And then you asked where that was. And I don't remember what the answer I gave you was, but cut forward a couple of months, and I told you that we were pregnant, that Dominica was pregnant, and that I had lied to you. She was already pregnant when you'd asked me this question before. And your response was, I don't know if you remember, like, he's lying to me. You already knew.
That's right.
Yeah. So that was a hysterical moment for me where I felt horrible. I felt so bad lying to you, but it was so early. I mean, she was probably only a couple weeks pregnant at that time. And so it was not something I felt I could share.
Yeah.
And
I was like, I know.
Yeah. Right. And so I'm happy to report that the sex of our child is